Why, O Lord, do you stand far away? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? So in Psalm 9, God sits on his throne, sits forever, establishes his throne. These are all pictures of a righteous judge taking action against injustice. But now we get to Psalm 10, and he's standing far away. I love the complexity of Scripture and how it speaks to so many different situations. The Spirit knows that there are times when God seems hidden. Most of us have been there. David goes on to narrate the events unfolding around him. In arrogance, the wicked hotly pursue the poor. Let them be caught in the schemes that they have devised. He's praying for that talionic justice we saw in the last chapter, but he doesn't see it here. For the wicked boasts of the desires of his soul, and the one greedy for gain curses and renounces the Lord. Look at all these speaking words. The wicked person is boasting, cursing, and renouncing. He knows the poor have no power to fight back, so he keeps taking advantage, and he's proud of it. In the pride of his face, the wicked does not seek him. All his thoughts are, there is no God, or God is not there. I can do what I want. There's no accountability. I'm in charge, and no one will hear my victim. His ways prosper at all times. Your judgments are on high, out of his sight. As for all his foes, he puffs at them. Your translation might say he snorts or sneers at them, adding insult to injury. He says in his heart, I shall not be moved. Throughout all generations, I shall not meet adversity. His mouth is filled with cursing and deceit and oppression. Under his tongue are mischief and iniquity. We keep hearing what this oppressor says and what comes out of his mouth and tongue. And as I read this, I'm anxiously waiting to hear from the oppressed people. What are the poor saying while they're being exploited? Apparently, their voices have been drowned out by the powerful oppressors. He sits in ambush in the villages. In hiding places, he murders the innocent. His eyes stealthily watch for the helpless. He lurks in ambush like a lion in his thicket. He lurks that he may seize the poor. He seizes the poor when he draws him into his net. The helpless are crushed, sink down, and fall by his might. He says in his heart, God has forgotten. He has hidden his face. He will never see it. The wicked man is saying this. It sounds like even the psalmist is starting to believe his words. He started the psalm asking why God hides himself. What about the victims of this oppressor? Do they agree that God is hidden? We still haven't heard from them. So then the psalmist intercedes on their behalf. Arise, O Lord, O God, lift up your hand. Forget not the afflicted. Why does the wicked renounce God and say in his heart, you will not call to account? But you do see. This is the psalmist's prayer of faith. The enemy says, God's not around to stop me. But the psalmist says, no, God does see what's happening. For you note mischief and vexation, that you may take it into your hands. To you the helpless commits himself. The victim is still silent, but he's trusting in God's deliverance. You have been the helper of the fatherless. Break the arm of the wicked and evildoer. That's powerful imagery. A few verses ago, the wicked guy was pulling a net and seizing the poor. How's he going to pull and seize with a broken arm? Notice how justice not only penalizes the offender, but also dismantles the mechanism that enabled him to cause injustice in the first place. What arms need to be broken in our society? He says, call his wickedness to account till you find none. Turn over every stone, it's worth it. The Lord is king forever and ever. The nations perish from his land. Now watch this. Lord, you hear the desire of the afflicted. I think it's significant that the afflicted hasn't had any lines this whole time. Vulnerable people usually don't have a voice. The oppressor gets to tell this story, but the victim is silenced. But this victim commits himself to God, and God hears their unspoken desire. God hears the cries of the abused that are minimized, that are covered up, that are ignored or not believed. He says, you will strengthen their heart. You will incline your ear. He's bending down to get their side of the story. You will incline your ear to do justice to the fatherless and the oppressed, people who didn't get the chance they should have had. God hears, and he's getting ready to settle the score, so that man who is of the earth may strike terror no more. Man who is of the earth ties up the theme that started in Psalm 8 and runs through these last few chapters. God is mindful of man in all his vulnerability, and the way he hurts other humans is an affront to God's character. Oppressors will return to the grave, but those who hope in the Lord will be vindicated. God is listening carefully to the stories of the afflicted, and the psalm says he's taking notes. He might settle the score in this lifetime, or maybe the next, but justice is coming. Meanwhile, as we image God in His just rule, how can we act in ways that are consistent with the values we see here? Are we able to identify and relate to the people who are being oppressed in our land? Do we value them enough to advocate for them? Are we inclining our ear to hear their voices?